So, what really happens when a country tries to rebuild after years under a brutal regime? We're going to dive into that today with Åsne Seierstad's incredible book, The Bookseller of Kabul. It gives us this raw, unfiltered look inside one family's home right after the Taliban fell. And honestly, the story of how this book even came to be, it's almost as wild as the story itself.
Okay, so this simple exchange you see here, this is basically the key that unlocked the whole thing. Imagine this. A Norwegian journalist, Åsne Seierstad, walks up to this bookseller in Kabul, Sultan Khan, and says, "Hey, can I just live with you and your family and write about everything?" And he just says yes, just like that. It completely opened a door into a private Afghan world that really no one from the outside had ever seen before. All right, so you really have to picture the scene because the setting is just everything. We're in Kabul. It's the spring of 2002. The Taliban, they've just been kicked out. So the religious police are gone. You've got girls going back to school. There's this feeling of hope in the air, but it's fragile. I mean, after decades of nonstop war, the city is covered in scars. And you got to ask, why would this time be any different?
So let's get into it. At the heart of this whole story is the patriarch, Sultan Khan. And look, if you want to understand his family, and maybe even a little piece of Afghanistan itself, you first have to get your head around the massive contradictions living inside this one guy. In public, in the world of books and ideas, Sultan was a legit hero. I mean, a true champion for free thought. This is a guy who stood up to every oppressive regime. The communists throw him in jail, he spends his time thinking about Persian philosophy. The Taliban take over, he literally risks his life to save the literary soul of his country. 10,000. And that's no exaggeration. Think about it. The Taliban are out there literally throwing books onto bonfires if they have pictures of people or animals. And Sultan, he's secretly gathering and hiding more than 10,000 of them in attics all over Kabul. His big dream was to one day give them all to the city's library to help rebuild it. But, and this is the massive but in the story, this is where we see the other side of Sultan Khan. The same guy who championed intellectual freedom for the nation. At home, he ruled his family like a tyrant. I mean, he takes a 16-year-old as his second wife, he completely cuts off his own brother just for opening a rival bookshop, and he yanks his sons out of school, telling them the only education they need is in his shop. It's a huge contradiction. Okay, so if Sultan's world is the bookshop, the street, the public square, there's this whole other universe operating right alongside it, almost totally invisible to the outside. And that's the world of the women in his family. This line right here is just wow. It's from these secret poems called landays that Afghan women have shared with each other for generations. It's such a raw, heartbreaking way of talking about their lives, this idea of being a beautiful flower that just wilts under the crushing weight of tradition. It's through poems like this that we get a tiny glimpse into a world of emotion that's normally kept completely locked away. This is one of those details that just stops you in your tracks. In the local language, Dari, the word for bride, aris, is the exact same word they use for doll. Just think about that for a second. It tells you so much about a deeply ingrained view of a woman's role. She's something to be pretty, to be looked at, to be owned, but not necessarily to have a voice or mind of her own. And if you want to see what this struggle for a voice really looks like, you just have to look at Sultan's younger sister, Layla. She's so sharp, speaks amazing English, and you can just feel her desperate longing for a life that exists outside the four walls of their apartment. But her reality? Oh man, it's just this relentless, grinding cycle of work for everyone else. Her life isn't hers at all. It's completely dictated by what the men in the house need, what the household chores demand. She's the first one up in the morning and the very last one to go to bed. Her whole life is just this routine. But she tries to break out. She really does. With the Taliban gone, it feels like maybe, just maybe, things are changing. So she secretly signs up for an English class. But when she gets there, it's a nightmare. It's in this dark cellar with bullet holes in the walls, and the boys in the class are just awful. The shame and the fear of being in a class with boys is just too much. And here's the really important part. Nobody stops her. The Taliban are gone. She stops herself. The prison of what people will think of honor and shame proves to be just as powerful as any law. And this is really where the book becomes so much bigger than just one family. When you look at these incredibly personal, intimate struggles, you start to see that they're basically a mirror of what the entire nation of Afghanistan is going through. I mean, you have to remember, these people didn't just appear out of nowhere. Their lives, their fears, their traditions, all of it was shaped by decades of nonstop crisis.
First, the Soviet invasion and a 10-year war. Then a brutal civil war that destroyed Kabul. And right after that, 5 years of the suffocating, brutal Taliban regime. That history is like a ghost that hangs over every single thing they do.
So all those tensions inside the Khan's tiny apartment, the fight between men and women, between old traditions and the hope for something new, those are the exact same forces pulling the entire country apart as it tries to figure out what it's going to be. And that future, it is hanging on by a thread. You've got the new government on the news talking all about women's rights, but then you look inside the Khan family, Sultan's own son tells his mom she can't go back to her career as a teacher. Layla tries to become a teacher herself, but gets stuck in endless bureaucracy. And as the book is wrapping up, the family's biggest worry is that Sultan's young new wife is going to have another daughter, which they literally call another little catastrophe. It's just devastating. And that leaves us with this one big question, right? For a story that is all about books, about saving them, selling them, and the power they're supposed to have, it all comes down to this. When a nation's future is a blank page, who actually gets to pick up the pen and write it? For the women in this family, and for Afghanistan as a whole, that answer is anything but certain.